super common for MSPs to lose their biggest customers. And often here's why they lose it. Number one is the company gets sold, and a merger acquisition happens, right? And it tends to be your better customers because they're the ones that are growing and profitable. And that means they have money to spend on IT and they're savvy and they're smart. And because of that reason, they're great customers for you, but then they tend to get purchased. So one is it's very, very common that happens a lot. Another reason could be that you're not servicing them enough. So they have genuinely outgrown you because you're not doing QBRs, you're not offering advanced cyber, you're not, you're not doing compliance. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. So I don't know why you lost them, but it's common. Okay. So don't beat yourself up too much, and it's painful. Now, how do you prevent that? Well, I mean, obviously you try to keep your customers as best as you can, but there's not a single business out there that doesn't lose customers. It's just everybody has churn. Okay. So the only way you can combat churn entirely is you just have to be able to replace that income. Because if you don't have a good, steady marketing stream of new opportunities, new leads coming in, you're going to get caught flat-footed. And the problem is marketing is not something you spin up in a week. It can take 6 months to a year for an MSP to really build a list and do the marketing and create the websites and do the blogs and set up the drip market. It's a lot. I mean, I know, guys, it's a lot. So if it takes you a year to really spin that up, and then once you've got it going, you got to keep it going. Zig Ziglar, I don't know if you remember Zig, Rob, or if you even watch Zig, but if you were a Zig fan like I was, one of the most effective things that Zig did on stage is he carried with him everywhere was this old pump. It was like an old water pump, right?
Yep.
And he would talk about how he's from Mississippi in the backwoods. Two brothers were driving along a dry, dusty road in the middle of nowhere, and they were thirsty, and they spotted a well, and the well had a pump, and they decided to pull over and, get some water to have a drink. So Jethro, I don't know what their names were. Jethro's like, okay, Judd, I'll go get the bucket. You start pumping. So Judd starts to pump, and he's pumping away, and he's pumping away, and he's pumping away, and he's pumping away. No water's coming out, right? And it's hot, and it's dry, and it's dusty, and they're thirsty. And Judd's all pumping away. And finally, he's like, well, I think Jethro says, well, you know what the problem is? We probably got to prime the pump a little bit. So he took a little bit of water he had in a tiny little water bottle and primed the pump in order to get it to work. So he did that. So that was like his first lesson is you got to prime the pump, meaning you got to put something in to get something out, right? And yes, you have to do work, but priming the pump would be like, you got to spend a little money on marketing sometimes. Yes, there's manual effort, making calls and emails and going to networking events and doing the things, but there's also, you got to put a little money in the till as well. So they prime it. He's pumping away. It's hot and it's dry and it's dusty, and he's getting pumping. He's like, nothing's happening. All of a sudden, Judd's like, there's no water in this well. And Jethro's like, no, don't stop. Keep pumping, because the minute you stop, like that water is coming up and coming up and coming up and coming up and coming up. And the minute you stop, the water just starts going right back down again. And he said, because once the water starts to flow, you don't have to really crank at it anymore. All you have to do is keep a steady, slow pressure on the pump, and the water will continue to flow, because the hard part is getting the water up to the top and out. And then it just takes a steady, gentle pressure to flow. So Zig did this pump, visual, and it was so effective. He used it, he carried it all over. He had a couple of them, he carried them all over the place when he would speak. And that's kind of the same with marketing, is you got to prime the pump. And there's a lot of hard manual effort to get the pump flowing. And if you stop too soon, all the effort goes right back down. And that happens a lot with MSPs too, is they start to do some marketing and they start to get a little bit of results, maybe a meeting, nothing major, but they start to get some results. And then they get busy and they stop and everything goes down. Now in order to start again, they got to go through all the manual labor of priming the pump and pumping away like mad to get the water back up. And so every time you stop, everything starts to just cool down. Gravity's automatic. It's automatic. Like your list is not a static asset. You stop sending emails and blog posts and communications, the relationship starts to die. It's not like, you go back to a prospect a year later with no communication in between, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so happy to hear you. Like they don't even remember you, right? So relationships aren't static assets, and your list and the marketing is a relationship with the marketplace. You've got to keep a slow, steady pressure. You got to get it off the ground and going, and then you've got to keep doing it, because you don't know when that client's going to leave you. You don't know when somebody, you're going to hit a financial crisis and you need some cash. And if you're waiting until you're desperate, then you're caught flat-footed. And then that's when you have to do things like lay off great employees or dip into your personal savings or maybe even go out of business, right? Those things are because you're just completely caught off guard. I mean, think of it like cybersecurity. You guys always tell your clients, hey, be prepared. There's a very good chance you're going to get hacked. We know the probability is very high. It's going to happen. So what do? You can't prevent it from happening. So you're prepared. So when it happens, it's a minor inconvenience, not a total devastating disaster. Same with marketing. You're going to lose clients. They're going to churn. So how do you prepare? You can't prevent it. You can prevent the probability, good customer service and you're attentive and all the things, right? So you can do a little bit to prevent it, but you can't prevent it guaranteed 100% altogether. So the only thing you can do is create some activity so that when it happens, you have newer opportunities coming in. And also, no one client should ever represent more than 10% of your income, because if you do, you're just setting yourself up for a world of hurt, because a business can lose about 10% of revenue and not implode. You start losing more than that, and you're not going to be, you're at an survivable event. Meaning that when I say, meaning you're going to have to lay people off, you're going to have to dip into savings, you're going to have to scramble, so you don't want to be doing that. And the way you do it is just you have to implement these marketing oil wells and keep them pumping so that you're never caught flat-footed.